You have surely heard the name Heracles. He was spoken of for centuries. His feats were remembered, rewritten, and retold again and again. But behind the glory lies another side of life. In this story, you will learn how Heracles was born thanks to divine deception, how he defeated death in his cradle by strangling the snake sent to him, why he killed his teacher right during the lesson, how he lost his family not on the battlefield but at home, killing with his own hand. You will hear how he fought creatures that no one even dared to name, how he journeyed to the edge of the world and descended into the underworld. Hera delayed the birth of Alcmena and hastened the birth of another woman who was expecting the son Eurystheus. Thus, he was born before Heracles and became the rightful heir to many lands. Heracles was born later, even though he was the son of Zeus. After the birth of Heracles and his brother Iphicles, Hera sent 2 snakes to their bedroom to kill the infants. Iphicles screamed and crawled away, while Heracles, not yet able to walk, caught the snakes with his bare hands and strangled them. It was clear even then that he was extraordinary. This child possessed a strength that could not be explained. His childhood was filled with education, and Amphitryon brought the best tutors of Hellas to teach Heracles. He was taught music and literacy by Lyn, the brother of the singer Orpheus. The wise centaur Chiron taught him wrestling and archery. Ivrit taught him spear throwing. Castor taught him chariot driving. But Heracles struggled with many trials and burdens that were attributed to his education and destiny. His strength and perseverance set him apart from others. Heracles did not like activities that did not suit his nature. Music seemed boring to him, and softness was a sign of weakness. All of this irritated him greatly. He was especially annoyed by the lyre and the voice of the tutor, as well as the monotonous notes that had to be repeated over and over without stopping. One day, when Lyn reprimanded Heracles, he grabbed the lyre in a rage and struck the teacher on the head with it. Lyn died on the spot from the blow. After the trial, Heracles explained that he acted in a fit of rage and was not punished. But Amphitryon understood that the boy needed to live outside the palace walls. He was sent out of town to grow up among nature and peasants. There he quickly became a local hero, protecting livestock from wolves, catching bandits, helping the elderly, and participating in festivals. At the festivals, Heracles easily won in wrestling and races, earning the respect and admiration of the inhabitants. When he grew up, he was invited to military campaigns. He became famous in the battle against the Minyans, helping the Thebans achieve victory. For this, King Creon of Thebes gave his daughter Megara to Heracles in marriage. It was an alliance based on gratitude and respect. They had several sons, and for the first time in his life, Heracles felt that one could live not in battle and anxiety, but in peace. But happiness was short-lived. No one dared to accuse him aloud. Everyone stepped back, leaving Heracles alone, as if he had become lead, impossible to wash off. He left the city and went to Delphi to the temple of Apollo. There he did not ask for forgiveness, but asked to be shown the way to cleanse himself of his guilt. The oracle, speaking with the voice of Pythia, ordered him to undergo 12 labors. These feats were assigned by King Eurystheus, who ruled in Tiryns. King Eurystheus gave the tasks not out of justice, but out of fear, hoping they would destroy Heracles. Each trial was deadly dangerous. The labors required battles with monsters and heroic deeds that even a god would not dare to perform. The first task was the Nemean lion. This beast seemed not to feel pain. Heracles understood that this was not an ordinary hunt, but a trial where brute force would be useless and powerless. He did not take an army with him, as others would have done. Heracles went alone, armed only with a bow, a sword, a club made by his own hands, and silent determination. When he entered the Nemean Valley, the day was drawing to an end. Everything around was unusual. Thick air, dead trees, and complete silence. Not even birds sang. Lion tracks were everywhere, broken branches, gnawed bones, and tufts of fur. Heracles did not hurry. He knew the beast would come out into the light sooner or later. But even Heracles did not expect the lion to appear so quickly. From the depths of the ravine came a low roar, and a huge beast with shining eyes climbed onto the rock opposite. The lion struck with its paws, tore at the air with its claws, tried to break free, but Heracles did not let go. He was the embodiment of strength and fury, an immovable boulder in battle. At some point, the lion weakened, froze, and stopped resisting. Heracles realized he had won, but the lion's hide remained untouched. It could not be removed with an ordinary knife. According to legend, Heracles used the lion's own claw to strip its hide. This was symbolic. Only the beast could reveal access to its secret. Heracles took off the hide of the slain lion and threw it over his shoulders. Not out of pride, but because it might be useful in the future, becoming his protection and symbol. He returned to Tyrannus alone just as he had left, telling no one more than necessary. His feat remained a secret known only to him. The main danger was that when one head was cut off, two would grow in its place. One of the heads was immortal, invulnerable to both time and weapons. The Hydra's poison was so strong that its breath poisoned the air, water, and earth. Wherever it passed, the grass blackened and birds fell dead. Heracles went to Lerna with his nephew Iolaus, understanding that ordinary strength would not suffice here. The boy was clever and calm, but not a warrior. Heracles felt that a single powerful strike would not solve the problem. They needed to act quickly and cohesively, not giving the monster time to recover. Entering the swamps, the air became heavy and breathing was difficult. Everything around was covered with a viscous grayish haze. The trees were crooked and the ground squelched underfoot. Heracles cut off another head of the Hydra, but new heads appeared faster and faster. They hissed, bit, and squeezed the hero's body, draining his strength with every second. The hero realized that his strength would run out before success and shouted to Iolaus, who was waiting with a burning branch in his hand, ready to help in battle. Every time Heracles cut off a head, Iolaus brought fire to the fresh cut. The flesh charred, the wound sealed, and new heads did not have time to grow. They worked in unison, as if rehearsed beforehand. One struck, the other burned. One fought, the other finished the job with fire, destroying the heads one by one. Step by step, all the heads were destroyed except one, the last immortal one, which yielded neither to sword nor fire. Heracles grabbed a huge stone and pressed the head to the ground. He struck so hard that he surpassed human strength until the head stopped moving. Heracles was forbidden from meeting him in person. The second labor was recognized, but rumors circulated that since the Hydra was not defeated alone, the labor should not be considered complete. Eurystheus tried to downplay the significance of this victory. Neither he nor others dared to argue aloud with the one who defeated a creature whose breath killed trees. Heracles did not argue or justify himself. He simply awaited the next task. After the first two labors where he faced monsters and death, Eurystheus decided to change tactics. Eurystheus wanted to exhaust the hero not by battle, but by time. The next task seemed less dangerous, but no less difficult. Heracles had to catch the Ceryneian hind. This hind was not a monster. It was considered an almost sacred creature. It meant no rushing, no noise, and no giving into anger. Only patience, endurance, and caution. The hero set off for Arcadia without weapons or companions, with a hunting cloak and a supply of food. The journey could take months, and that is exactly what happened. Heracles followed the doe for almost a year. He tracked her by the morning dew, crushed blades of grass and fur on the branches. Sometimes he saw the doe in the distance, her golden antlers reflecting the sunlight. It seemed like a mirage. He did not try to approach too abruptly, knowing that any movement could ruin everything. He crossed dense forests, forded rivers, climbed mountains, and descended into valleys. They walked on foot, slowly, side by side, as if equals. They stopped to rest, and she did not try to run away, understanding that everything was decided. When Heracles approached Mycenae, Artemis appeared before him, a cold gaze, not anger, but full of the deer's belonging. Heracles did not justify himself. He explained that the feat was not his will, that he had harmed no one, and preserved the life and dignity of the deer. She listened to him and let him go. She allowed him to show the prey in Respios only for a moment to confirm the completion of the task. Afterwards, Heracles had to release the deer back into the forests of Arcadia. That's what he did. He brought the deer to the gates of Tyrannus, showed it to the king, and immediately removed the harness, releasing it. The deer ran lightly, as if it were all a dream. The wound on it had healed, with almost no traces left. Heracles was left empty-handed, but the task was completed. Eurystheus was displeased with such an outcome. They could split a tree. Its roar was heard for kilometers. Its tracks left dents even on stones. The beast attacked herds, destroyed crops, overturned carts and houses. People fled villages in panic at the sounds of the beast emerging from the forest. All who tried to stop it died too quickly, unable to tell anything about it. Heracles set out alone, knowing that accompaniment was useless. The beast could kill with one headbutt, and a crowd only hindered, becoming a burden and danger to all. He climbed into the mountains where the air was colder, the trees were low, and the snow lay even in warm months. The path became harsher and more dangerous with every mile. On the way, Heracles stopped at the house of the centaur Pholus, a wise and peaceful creature living far from noisy roads, to rest and refresh before continuing his journey. Pholus treated Heracles to food and opened a clay vessel of wine. The higher he climbed, the quieter it became around him. The boar's tracks were deep, the snow melted during the day and froze at night, turning the path into a dangerous, slippery trap. Heracles tracked the beast on one of the ridges. The boar was digging in the snow in search of food, lowering its huge head, not noticing the hunter who patiently waited for his moment. When the beast noticed Heracles and went on the attack, the hero retreated, guiding it higher towards a narrow mountain crevice where the path became more dangerous and the beast lost its balance. With each step, the beast sank deeper into the snow, slipped, and lost its balance. At one point it slipped, and Heracles rushed forward, grabbing it by the tusks. Heracles wrapped the beast with a rope and knocked it down. It was not a fight, but a struggle with weight and fury. He did not want to kill, only to catch the animal. The feat was credited. The beast was released far into the mountains where no one lived anymore. Heracles did not ask about the fate of the beast. He returned with a new scar and fatigue. Sometimes the heaviest burden is not the beast itself, but what happens on the way to it. The next task was different, without monsters or poisons. The new task had no sacred animals or poison, but there was dirt on a monstrous scale. King Eurystheus assigned Heracles to clean the stables of King Augeas. Augeas ruled Elise, a rich, fertile region famous for its herds. The stables had not been cleaned for decades and were terribly neglected. Heracles faced the task of cleaning stables that housed thousands of bulls and horses, covered in dirt and manure accumulated over many years. The difficulty of the task was not the monster, but the scale of the dirt covering the stables. However, Heracles did not object. He accepted the task without words, like all the previous ones, ready to carry out any assignment. Arriving in Elis, Heracles did not reveal who had sent him. He met Augeas and proposed a deal, to clean the stables in one day for a tenth of the herd. Augeas, confident in the impossibility, agreed and brought his son as a witness to confirm the hero's subsequent failure. But Heracles did not take a shovel in his hands. He did not start with the usual work like others, but went out to the rivers Alpheus and Peneus. He began digging channels, changing the course of two rivers at once so that the water would flow through the stables and clean them. In one day, the river flows completely washed away the manure that had accumulated for decades, cleaning the stalls and surroundings. Thus, Heracles completed the task, proving that strength and intelligence can solve even the most unpleasant problems. However, a witness, Augeas' own son, confirmed that the contract was concluded, and for this he was also expelled by his father. Heracles did not argue. He returned to the city of Thrinacia and reported the completion of the task, despite the injustice. Eurystheus, learning that the work was done with the help of rivers, not by Heracles' own hands, refused to count the feat. He claimed that Heracles received the task as a servant but acted as a contractor, so the feat did not meet the conditions. Despite this, Eurystheus continued to give new trials to Heracles, not recognizing his previous merits. Later, already beyond the scope of the feat, Heracles returned to Elis and led an army, defeating Augeas. He handed over power to Augeas' son, the very one who spoke the truth and supported justice. According to legend, in honor of this victory, the Olympic Games were established, symbolizing peace and justice. After cleaning the stables, Heracles left silently, without reward or recognition, with a feat that no one wanted to acknowledge. Nevertheless, the task was completed. The stables, polluted for decades, became clean in just one day. And it was done not by gods, not by an army, but by a simple river current that changed everything in an instant. Coercion, only reason in the river. That's how the sixth labor of Hercules can be described. He arrived in Arcadia at Lake Stymphalus, surrounded by forests and hills descending to the water. At first glance, the place seemed peaceful, but the locals knew the lake did not belong to people. There lived birds that were not called by name. They were feared and avoided. The Stymphalian birds were extraordinarily dangerous. Their feathers were iron and sharp, like arrowheads that fell and pierced everything in their path. Their cries were deafening, like the strike of a gong that left ears ringing. The birds attacked in flocks and no one could cope with them. Arrows did not penetrate their dense feathers, nets broke, and fire only enraged the birds. The sound of the rattles was loud and sharp. It was unbearable for the Stymphalian birds, who guarded the lake and caused much trouble. Heracles tied 3 rattles to his belt and climbed onto a rock above the lake. He began to strike them louder and more rhythmically. The noise filled the valley and the birds soared into the sky. There were many of them, black, shiny, with burning eyes and the metallic rustle of wings. The birds circled above the lake, hesitating to attack immediately. But when they began to shed feathers like a rain of steel, Heracles drew his bow. His arrows were poisoned with the venom of the Lernaean hydra. He aimed precisely, unhurriedly, striking one bird after another with each shot. When weakness was revealed, he acted quickly and precisely. Danger often hides in the branches, and then you must not fight, but draw it out with sound and light. Silence reigned between the blows. The 7th task sent Hercules to King Minos on the island of Crete. Eurystheus ordered him to bring back the wild bull that terrified the island alive. The bull was not a legendary monster, did not breathe fire, and had no poisonous fangs, but it was considered a curse. Madness, not anger, was reflected in its eyes. According to legend, the bull came out of the sea, sent by Poseidon to King Minos as a sign of support for his power. Minos was supposed to sacrifice it, but did not want to destroy it. Instead of the bull, Minos sacrificed an ordinary animal. Finally, he found the bull grazing alone at the foot of the hill. The bull was magnificent, strong, with thick white fur and shining horns. There was tension in the animal's movements. It was not grazing, but guarding. It sensed the presence of Heracles. When the hero stepped forward, the bull raised its head and charged. The blow was strong, the ground trembled from the hooves. Heracles did not dodge, took the hit and grabbed the horns. A struggle began, but not to the death. The hero's goal was to hold the beast, not to kill it. According to some stories, the bull appeared in Attica, where Theseus would later kill it. According to others, it disappeared, dissolving into the mist of the pre-dawn landscape, as if returning to the sea. Heracles did not object. It was enough for him that the task was completed. This feat involved less blood, but no less tension and more respect for the enemy. Because sometimes the enemy is not something to be destroyed. It is something to be understood and accepted in order to become stronger and wiser. You need to understand, hold on and wait it out. With each new task, it became clearer. Heracles' feats were not only about strength, but also a constant confrontation with the disruption of order. What was originally peaceful and useful became dangerous. The lion, which was not supposed to be invulnerable, the bull, which was supposed to become a victim, turned into a curse. Arriving at the shore, Heracles immediately headed to the palace of Diomedes, where the mares were kept. There, in stone enclosures, his new battle began. He walked on ground scented with death and saw them, large creatures with black fur and eyes filled with blood. Yellow teeth gleamed in the darkness. They sensed that he was not afraid, but still watched closely. Heracles and his companions approached the chained mares to free them from their bonds. They removed the chains from the mares, put on bridles, and began slowly leading them away from the palace. The mares resisted, bit, and kicked. Everything went according to plan until Diomedes appeared with his warriors. He was not going to give up the horses without a fight, and a fierce battle began. There is another legend about the mares that later belonged to Alexander the Great. One of them became the ancestor of his beloved horse, Bucephalus. Hercules' feat was accomplished in fire, not in blood, in the balance he restored. He broke the link between evil and its creator. To stop rage, sometimes you need not weapons, but the end of the story from which it was born. This is the essence of Hercules' feat, which had deep meaning. Returning to Tiryns after his previous feat, Hercules barely had time to rest. A new task awaited him, to obtain the belt of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. Hippolyta's belt was not just an ornament, but a symbol of power and warrior valor, given to her by the god of war Ares himself. For the Amazons, the belt meant the right to command, make decisions, and lead others into battle, the highest expression of their strength and independence. The Amazons lived far on the shores of the Black Sea, in a land rarely trodden by a Greek foot. They were warriors living by their own laws. They were not called enemies, but were not considered friends either. The Amazons did not accept husbands and did not need protection, being an independent people. Hercules did not know what to expect from this task. It was not about catching a beast or defeating a force, but negotiating or taking the belt by force. He sailed with a small crew on a ship, heading to the land of the Amazons, where trials and the unknown awaited him. The expedition traveled, and the ship stopped in cities where Heracles was already known. He was received with respect but caution, discussing his battles and changes. More and more, people talked about how he fought and won, but changed. His campaigns ceased to be mere service and became something greater and more dangerous. When he arrived at the Amazon capital, he was met not with weapons but with questions. Hippolyta came out to him herself, dressed simply, without fear or interest in war. She listened to his honest request. The belt was needed not for him, but to complete a mission. Hippolyta looked at him for a long time, as if trying to understand the essence. Then she said she would give the belt. Heracles did not expect this. For the first time, the task could be completed without a battle. The death or defeat of Hippolyta divided the Amazons. Some retreated to the steppes, others swore revenge. Trust was destroyed forever. Heracles did not want conflict, but it all happened before his eyes. He returned with the belt, which Eurystheus accepted as a trophy. Eurystheus considered the task completed and did not care how exactly it was done. The belt was delivered, and that was enough. Heracles was silent for a long time after the campaign. He did not talk about it, did not boast of victory, and did not carry the trophy with him. In this task, he did not defeat the beast. He lost the chance to do something differently. Sometimes the world collapses because of fear or carelessness. To reach Erythea, Heracles had to cross Libya, head west where cities vanished and stars changed their usual positions. The heat was unbearable. The earth was white-hot. In fury, Heracles drew his bow and shot straight at the sun, showing his courage. Helios, the sun god, was surprised by Heracles' bravery. Instead of anger, he gifted the hero a golden cup for traveling across the ocean to the night side of the world. With the help of the golden cup, Heracles sailed across the ocean and reached the island where Gerion's herd grazed, preparing for the upcoming battle. The first to meet the hero was Orthrus, the two-headed dog. The fight was quick. Heracles struck him with a club, not letting him come closer. When the herdsman guarding the cattle ran to the noise, he met the same fate, and Heracles felt no pity. He did what was necessary, freed the bulls, gathered the herd, and began preparing to retreat. Geryon appeared when everything was almost done. Geryon came not out of fear, but because he knew, if a battle happened, there would be only one. He had 3 spears, 3 shields, and 1 plan. The battle was tough. Heracles darted among the enemy bodies, blocking blows and trying to keep the bulls from scattering and escaping. He understood that if he lost, not only he would die, but the entire plan would fail. Then he drew his bow, pulled the string to the limit, and released a poisoned arrow. The arrow pierced through 3 bodies at once. Geryon staggered and slowly collapsed as if a shadow was leaving the island. The herd submitted and no longer resisted. The bulls were left without a shepherd, without a dog, without an owner. Heracles ferried the herd back in a golden bowl, but the journey was no less difficult than the battle. The herd constantly scattered, the bulls were stubborn, some ran away. In Italy, the hero was forced to stop and gather the scattered animals again. In Etruria, Heracles fought local bandits. The Thracians tried to deceive him, but he still returned with the bulls intact. When he brought the bulls to Tiryns, Eurystheus immediately accepted them and ordered them to be sacrificed. The Garden of Hesperides was located far to the west, beyond the ocean and the last cliffs, where the eternal whisper of leaves created a mysterious atmosphere. In the garden grew a tree given to Hera on the day of her wedding to Zeus. Golden apples hung on it, the fruits of immortality. It was impossible to pick the apples. They were guarded by the Hesperides, nymphs of the evening, daughters of the night, and a dragon coiling around the tree in rings. He did not sleep, did not get distracted, and did not weaken. His eyes never closed, and hissing was heard even before entering the garden. Heracles did not know where to go. He set out on a journey that was not a mere trip, but a true wandering through deserts and mountains. He crossed swamps and asked sages, hunters, and goddesses for directions to his destination, knowing no rest. Among the rocks, he met the Titan Atlas, who literally held the celestial vault on his shoulders. Atlas was a relative of the Hesperides, and Heracles realized that only he knew the way to the garden. Heracles proposed a trade. He would hold the sky if Atlas brought the apples from the garden. Atlas agreed and handed the celestial vault to Heracles, the weight of time and the breath of the universe. Heracles stood silently under this burden, without complaints or fear, accepting the responsibility. Atlas returned with the apples, but seeing freedom, did not want to lose it. He offered to carry the apples to Eurystheus himself, while Heracles continued holding the sky. Heracles agreed, but asked Atlas to hold the sky for a moment so he could adjust his cloak. Atlas did not expect deception and agreed. At that very moment, Heracles took the apples and left Atlas in his original position. He returned to Tiryns with a trophy that turned out to be mysterious. Eurystheus did not know what to do with the fruits. According to one version, he was afraid of their power and gave them back to the gods. According to another, the apples disappeared like everything unlawful. For Heracles, the trophy was not important, but the journey was. He found what no one else could find, spoke with those who do not speak, and supported what no one holds. He did it not with a sword. Sometimes the hardest thing is not to kill the dragon, but to understand where its day begins. This is the philosophy of the hero that he learned. Hercules' last task did not require defeating monsters or capturing kings. He had to descend into the underworld and bring back Cerberus. Cerberus was a three-headed dog, the guardian of the boundary between life and death. The task seemed impossible because the beast was terrible and the path was dangerous. Hades is a one-way road. No living person returned from there without consequences. Hercules began the journey by going to Eleusis for a purification ritual. Hades met him calmly. He knew the hero's goal and did not interfere, but set a condition. Cerberus could only be taken away unarmed, without a sword, club, or destructive force, only with hands and will. Heracles agreed to the condition and went deeper into the underworld. Finally, he saw the beast. Cerberus stood by. Stone gates stood before Heracles. The creature had 3 heads from whose mouths thick steam flowed, and its fur was bristled like a snake. With each breath, the dog radiated not rage, but pure anxiety mixed with something ancient and motionless, as if long lost through the ages. Heracles approached cautiously, neither shouting nor rushing forward. He knew that such a creature could not be defeated by force and sought another way. He waited for the dog to jump, and at that moment grabbed it by the neck. He held it not with fury, but with firm will and calm. Cerberus struggled and growled with all 3 heads, fought, but Heracles did not let go. He did not seek to subdue, but simply held with firmness. Heracles held the dog until it realized that this was not a fight, but a manifestation of will. Then, Cerberus froze and calmed down. With Hades' permission, Heracles led Cerberus to the surface. People trembled and retreated, seeing him led the guardian of the dead. Eurystheus, seeing the dog from afar, immediately hid in his palace. He was not interested in the details. The main thing was that the task was completed. Cerberus was brought back alive. Heracles completed the task and returned the dog to the underworld, leaving no traces and taking nothing with him. With this feat, Heracles' journey was complete. He disappeared from people's sight, leaving only the legend of his great deed. Heracles passed through forests, deserts, and mountains, not giving up even in the face of death. He proved that boundaries exist only as long as we accept them. Having completed all the tasks, he gained freedom. He was no longer a servant, but he did not return to his former life either. He remained the son of Zeus with an unusual fate. The name of Heracles was known throughout all the Greek lands. He was destined to live on, and this life proved to be no less difficult than all his trials. He took part in new campaigns, fought in foreign wars, and helped the besieged. Kings invited him, and enemies feared his name. Heracles married again, more than once. The story of his life came to an end. He had passed 12 trials that required strength, patience, and inner resilience. He performed feats, fought monsters, traveled, encountered gods, made mistakes, and started over. He moved forward even when the path was unclear. Pain became familiar, the goal seemed foreign, but he did not stop. In the end, he did not become a god immediately, nor receive a reward that could be taken with him. He simply completed everything he was supposed to do, and that was enough to remain forever in memory and legends.